Alright, let's get one thing straight. Jak and Daxter deserved better. We're talking about a franchise that went from PlayStation's golden child to something Naughty Dog doesn't even acknowledge in public. How did Jak go from open world platforming greatness to absolute silence? And more importantly, could Jak and Daxter come back? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today, because the series didn't just fade away. It was left behind. And the worst part is, there was plans for Jak IV. Yeah, plans, concept art, a whole vision. But then, they just scrapped it. Why? Well, we'll go back to that. But for right now, I'm Remy, and I just want to know, has anyone checked on Jak and Daxter? And if not, let's. We just started at the beginning. Crash Bandicoot put Naughty Dog on the map. But in the late 90s, they were ready for something new. They wanted a seamless open world. No loading screens, no level selects, just a massive explorable space that felt alive. With that in mind, development for the game began in 1999. This game came after Crash Team Racing, and that game was Jak I, the Precursor's Legacy, released in 2001, bringing colorful environments and one super interesting sidekick. Well, if you could get past all the extra talking he had to do, cause Jak in Jak I was a non-verbal protagonist consisting of grunts and other nebulous sound effects. There were never really words out of that guy in the first game. What Jak lacked in vocabulary, the game made up for with features and spades of them. Tons of collectibles, numbers of missions, minigame puzzles, and platforming stages. As I mentioned earlier, it was one of the few games at the time to have an actual open world, so no loading screens, which in 2001 was an incredible flex. Critics praised the graphics and the technical ability of the game. Even Metacritic gave Jak and Daxter 1 glowing reviews, and I have to fully agree with it. Genuinely, it was such a great game. Jak and Daxter 1 sold over 2 million copies in the US alone. At this point, they were just styling on people because of how great the game was. So naturally, fans eagerly awaited the next installment of the franchise, waiting on bated breath to see where they naturally go. Will we see those naturally green vibrant lands again, or those unique designs like Sentinel Beach Town? But then, Naughty Dog did something unexpected. They said no to all of that, changed everything for the sequel. So this is where the tone shift happens in the franchise. Released on the PlayStation 2 in 2003, Jak II. Brother, Jak II broke ankles, tore ACLs, and ended people's careers. With how much of a left turn this game took, Jak II was gritty, dark, and most surprising of all, Jak could talk. And Jak wanted you to know he could talk, and he has something to say.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
That was the first thing he says in his own franchise. Crazy stuff. Jak himself went from a silent protagonist to an angsty action hero with a deep voice and a vendetta. My guy wanted bodies after that time skip. So I kinda get it, after getting tortured for 2 years. You might have some things you want to get off your chest, so, you know, I understand it. So why did this happen? Why did our happy-go-lucky MC get such a shift in narrative? Well, there are a few prevailing theories on that actually. Number 1, Grand Theft Auto 3 had just dropped and potentially changed gaming forever, and Naughty Dog wanted in on the chaos. Number 2, for a few people, Jak may have just felt like Crash Bandicoot with a blue fit on, and they probably wanted Jak to have his own identity, and they decided edgy was that identity. And number 3, Sony may have wanted an IP that appealed more to mature players, and I guess they thought Jak was the IP for that. Personally though, I don't know how they went from Jak being a teenager in a forest in a magical land to, hey yo, let's give this man a gun. That's what he needs to solve all of his problems, a gun. And somehow they went with it. All those are just speculations, of course. Obviously, I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I do really wish I was in that room when they pitched this tone shift to the team. Like, how do you even imagine that pitch went? Thank you for coming to the meeting today. I want to talk to you about a new narrator for our mainline series, Jak and Daxter. You see these lovable duos from our game that sold over 2 million copies? Let's ignore all of that and make him an edgelord who loves to shoot people. Also, give him an evil form with gray skin and dark eyes and horns. It's a great idea, right guys? Guys? Hello? I felt like it went something like that. Anyway, with this new direction set for Jak II, the game started developing. The world of Jak became a dystopian city full of hovercars, guns, and rebellion. Some fans loved it, others were, you know, a little hesitant, which is understandable. Now on a technical level, Jak II was a third-person, three-dimensional platformer in which the player controls Jak. However, the new gimmick for this game is Jak's dark mode. Using the L2 trigger, once the the E word meter is full, Jak can release a bunch of new melee moves and techniques like Dark Bomb and Dark Blast, and a bunch of other insert something violent at the word dark onto it moves. It's really interesting. Jak also earns the Morph Gun, his iconic other sidekick in the game, capable of equipping various weapons, introducing shooter elements to mix up the game's brawler style gameplay. Even with all these new mechanics and shift in tone, the core gameplay of Jak and Daxter was still the same overall. The game still revolved around platforming and side quests. The soul of Jak 1 was still alive. It was just in a new edgy body. And even with that new fresh paint of edge paint thing on Jak, the game sold over 2.5 million copies globally. With this, Jak II was officially done, and Naughty Dog would begin revealing the last of the mainline franchise, Jak III. Released on the PS2 in 2004, Jak III would be the end of the mainline games in the Jak franchise. Yep, that's everything. Everything else is 1000% non-canon spin-offs. Yep, super exciting, super fun spin-offs that we will get to later.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa!
That's too damn bad!
Anyway, Jak 3 is the end of the story of Jak, and it keeps the tone of Jak 2. So if you were hoping the game was gonna go back to those green hills of Jak 1, stop it, it's done. Naughty Dog says we don't do that here anymore. Go play Sonic if you want to see a green hill zone. So Jak is back again with his morph gun and some mess as he normally does. But this time you get a car. Well, it's technically a buggy, but like, you know, it's car adjacent. And if you thought he was a bit too edgy in the last game, fear not, true believers, for Jak 3 gives you the relief you need in the form of Light Jak. Hinted at in the first game, Light Jak gives Jak this new blue ethereal aura and weird tentacle wings, and it heals and stuff. But overall, it's kinda whatever to me personally. Dark form is cooler. The gameplay and core mechanics stay the same as in Jak 2. You gun, you run, you drive, and you murder. Though some mechanics have been given a bit more depth considering it's the next installment of the franchise. For example, the dark form in Jak 3 can now be used whenever, which is a great quality of life change. And what's Jak without his morph gun? Jak 3 decided his gun didn't do enough, so they gave it more mods. As for vehicles, if we're talking about Jak 3, we have to talk about the Wasteland. The Wasteland becomes a new key location in Jak 3, and the best way to traverse it is with a buggy, which will take up majority of the gameplay, for better or for worse. And minigames are back also, so if you like those, you got your minigames. With all this considered, for a lot of fans, Jak 3 was more or less Jak 2.5. Still a great game, but overall was not as inspired creatively as the first two Jak games. And once again, while it technically wasn't the end of Jak games, but for a lot of people, this is where Jak ended. Overall, a good game, and it got great reviews, but it sold the worst out of the trilogy, only selling 1.85 million. Despite Jak 3's solid reception, it seemed caught between the past and the future. Jak 3 may have been a fitting end to Jak's journey for many fans, but it also felt like the series was reaching the limits of what it could do on the PS2. The technical growth was there, but the spark of creativity was 1000% dimmed by the familiar mechanics and the shadows of what came before. It may not have been the final everyone hoped for, but it still wrapped up Jak's mainline adventure with a solid, somewhat nostalgic finish, marking the end of an era for some. But the story of Jak didn't just evolve with the games, it also evolved with the music. The music reflected this transition, capturing the shift in tone and atmosphere as the series tried to find a balance between its roots and its more mature direction. The Precursor Legacy had a whimsical and almost tribalistic sounding music that fit the world perfectly. The tribal sounds caught by the music seemingly tried to encapsulate the adventurous spirit to some extent. As for Jak II, industrial, moody, cinematic, more dystopian world sounding. And as we head to Jak 3, it was a mixture of both, as if the series was trying to balance its old identity with a new one, taking from the series' roots with its more mature direction, reflected in Jak's journey between innocence and responsibility. But when Naughty Dog moved on from this new franchise entirely, you could say they went somewhere uncharted for them in the gaming space. I'm sorry. Okay. Surprisingly enough, the series had some actual deep lore. Echo, however you want to pronounce it, the Precursors, time travel, a dystopian government, the slow realization that Jak himself was part of a greater destiny, which I'm sure was not the plan after the first game. I got money on that one. Each game of the franchise kept raising the stakes after stakes after stakes, so let's go over those stakes. This is gonna be a long one. I'm gonna try to condense it, so buckle up. The story of Jak and Daxter, a time travel mess featuring eco, mutations, and betrayal. Before Jak even existed, the galaxy was ruled by the Precursors, a mysterious ancient race that seemed godlike. But spoilers, they're actually just a bunch of talking ocelots like Daxter, so keep that in mind. Anyway, they created Eco, the magical energy source that fuels everything. Different type of Ecos do different things. Green Eco heals you, blue makes you fast, red makes you strong, yellow makes you shoot fireballs, and then there's Dark Eco. That's just bad news until it isn't. The Precursors built a whole civilization powered by Eco, but at some point they straight up just dipped, left everything behind, turned into a bunch of ancient ruins because reasons. And now we can get started on the mainline story. Fast forward a bunch of centuries or however long it takes for Jak to be born. You'll get what I mean by that. The events of Jak I start to unfold. Jak is a mute teenager living in Sandover Village with his best friend Daxter, who is definitely the yapper of the group. One day randomly they decide to break the rules and go visit Misty Island. Upon arrival they see two mysterious shady people, Gol and Maya, messing with Dark Eco. Jak, being the genius that he is, decides to randomly touch some Precursor stuff, and boom, Daxter falls into a vat of Dark Eco. And instead of dying, he turns into an ocelot, which is kind of a win, also isn't. All things considered, he takes it very well, and he's just rolling with the punches. Anyway, they discover Gol and Maya want to flood the world with Dark Eco, because reasons. So, realizing Jak and Daxter live in the world, they decide to stop them with the power of Light Eco, a super rare Eco that somehow fixes everything. Good old plot MacGuffin. So, they do a couple mini games, some trials, some quests, and a couple hours later, they save the day. Yay! Daxter's still a furry though, but the day's saved. Simple, right? For the most part, everything's fine after the events of Jak 1, until Jak and the crew find a giant ring-shaped precursor artifact called the Riftgate, and Jak, being Jak, touches it immediately. And with the hindsight I've been given from the past game, I've gotta ask, why would he touch it? Did he not learn his lesson from last time? His best friend's still a furry. Anyway, the whole team gets sucked into a time portal and lands in the dystopian future city, also known as Haven City. But before anyone could ask what just happened, Jak is captured by Baron Praxis, the ruler of Haven City. And for 2 whole years, random time skip by the way, Praxis tortures Jak by injecting him with Dark Eco, turning him into a rage monster with dark powers. My question is, why though? Like, did no one else in the city want to take the super soldier program? And another thing, why did Praxis find this random teenager thinking like, yep, I'm gonna torture this guy for 2 years, turn him into a weapon of mass destruction, and nothing could ever go wrong? And then something goes wrong. Daxter breaks him out of jail, finally. Now Jak can actually talk, and his first words?
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
Impactful stuff right there. Really motivates the player. So you escape the prison, torture, experimental lab place, and you go to Haven City. It's a mess. You've got the metalheads. These alien bug monsters, they're always attacking. Also, the city's in a full-blown civil war, and Praxis is using the evil militia to keep control. So, Jak teams up with the Underground, a rebellion led by the Shadow, who is later on revealed to be young Samos, which is so crazy because it's the old green sage from Jak 1. But wait, if that wasn't weird enough, it gets weirder. Turns out, the little kid in the rebellion is actually young Jak from the past. As it turns out, Jak was sent through time as a child to escape the chaos. This means the whole your destiny is pre-written thing is 1000% real. Anyway, Jak kills Praxis and defeats the metalhead leader Core and finds out that his real destiny is to be the leader of the Haven City or whatever. If you couldn't tell, I find the time travel shenanigans so much more interesting than the actual story of Jak II. I'm just saying, like, who thought of this time travel, timey-wimey hot mess of a plotline? I love it. Also, Daxter's still a furry, so that's still a thing. Okay. Anyway, time for Jak 3. So you remember how Jak just saved Haven City? Well, they don't. Jak immediately gets betrayed and exiled into the Wasteland. There he finds a group of desert warriors led by their king Damus, who takes Jak in and treats him like a son, which is awkward because, plot twist, Damus is Jak's actual real dad. Oh, also, meanwhile, the planet's ending, I guess, that's important. There are these weird ancient beings called the Dark Makers, pretty much just evil furries. They're actually just evil precursors, but you know, whatever, they want to wipe out all life or something. Jak, being the main protagonist, eventually goes back to Haven City, fights off the invading army, unlocks light Jak powers, fights some more people, eventually meets his rival who's a cyborg now because reasons, and has to beat him a couple times to the final fight where the guy gets a giant precursor robot and fights Jak because he wants to blow up the planet. And after all that chaos, Jak wins, stops him from blowing up the planet. The precursors finally show up and reveal that they're actually just giant ocelots. So, turns out Daxter is in the image of God. So, all hail Daxter. And in hindsight, I explained that to you at the beginning, but I need you to imagine real fast that you're a kid playing Jak III for the first time. You get this reveal that Daxter, the smart talking, wisecracking dude, is in the physical image of an actual god. And you're just like, what the what? Like, that blew my mind as a kid, but you know, nowadays it's just kind of funny. Anyhow, the Precursors offer Jak a job of traveling the universe and being the new chosen one or whatever. Jak says, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna just chill here or something. So the day is saved. Jak is the hero of Haven City once again. Daxter stays in Ocelot forever. That's the end of Jak. Yeah. Oh, also, the game ends with the reveal of Jak's actual name. It's Mar, because why not? Okay, I guess now I can talk about the spin-offs. Yeah, okay. First up to bat, we have Jak X Combat Racing, where everyone forgets the whole "you just saved the world" thing, and they just race death cars for fun. Jak almost dies from poisoning, he wins a race, gets a cure, and that's the end of the story pretty much. I'm not going any further into depth. You can't make me. Okay, now for the worst and final one. Jak and Daxter, The Lost Frontier, which is basically a sequel to Jak X, but like, it's just so dumb. You know what? I'm not even gonna talk about it. You can't make me. Jak has a plane. There you go. That's the whole game. Jak's hair, whack. His fit, whack. Everything about that game, whack. We're going to the next thing. Since then, silence. Naughty Dog abandoned the franchise, and Jak has been MIA ever since. But hey, at least Daxter got a spin-off, and so that's kind of cool. You know, that's a win for my guy. My final takeaway from the Jak lore: Jak's life is basically happy childhood, time travel, torture, revenge, betrayal, apocalypse, dad drama. Precursors were always furries, death race, forgotten by Naughty Dog. We're ignoring everything else. And that, my friends, is the full timeline of Jak and Daxter. Now somebody tell Sony to bring it back. Critics loved the game. Fans were overall split. Jak and Daxter had changed from a colorful adventure to something more violent and edgy. Therefore, people embraced evolution or wanted the series to go back to its roots. And this divisive reception to the IP is what a lot of people think is another reason why the game got shelved to an extent. And this reception has a direct correlation to the game's finances. So let's look at that real fast. Every single Jak game sold over 1 million copies. The first game obviously selling the best out of the franchise, even being one of the best-selling PS2 games of all time. Unfortunately though, compared to Crash Bandicoot or even Ratchet & Clank, Jak was honestly second tier. He wasn't marketable as a mascot. He was too stylized to be the next Master Chief, but also too serious to be the next Mario. So with that in mind, it makes more sense that Naughty Dog saw more potential in cinematic storytelling rather than continuing their mascot platforming games. And with that shift in mindset, everything changed afterwards. The year's 2007, Uncharted launched on the PS3. Proving that Naughty Dog could do more than just platformers. And after that game came out, Naughty Dog fully embraced cinematic storytelling. And this change set the stage for Last of Us, the only game Sony allows Naughty Dog to make nowadays. Nothing but Last of Us and Last of Us 2 remakes eventually, and for the next port, HD remake, cinematic 4XD, I don't know, Smell-O-Vision eventually. They're never gonna make anything other than Last of Us, it feels like. If it doesn't have Ellie on it, they don't want it. But before Last of Us came out, something interesting happened. Naughty Dog had actually started working on a Jak 4 in 2009, 2010-ish. Concept art exists, early ideas were floating around, this was real, but then they scrapped it because they couldn't make it serious enough. And granted, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic when I say they couldn't make it serious enough. They actually wanted to attempt to make a more realistic, a more contemporary, and a more serious tone to Jak and Daxter. Yeah, the franchise where the mascot is a talking god Ocelot. Like, come on guys, y'all doing too much. This is the same studio that made Crash Bandicoot. I hate that gaming has got to the point where it feels like studios can't have fun anymore. Everything now is about graphics and frame rate and can I see the RTX in the water, but it's like, there's only so many frames you can see with the human eye. There's only so much definition you can get from a pixel where it isn't uncanny. And this isn't a dig at the devs, but it's like, calm down guys. I promise you, you could have made it if you actually wanted to. Because Ratchet & Clank is thriving. It was actually a launch PS5 game. Spyro and Crash both got remakes. So it just bugs me that Jak is the only one left behind. I feel like we'll get a Sly Cooper game before Jak comes back. People want this franchise back. Here's what I imagine a modern Jak and Daxter game could look like. Open world, deep RPG mechanics, parkour, everyone loves parkour. A balance of humor and high-stake adventure. A new Jak game could easily work in today's market. For example, Legend of Zelda. Breath of the Wild is right there. Just slap a city on it or something and give Zelda a gun. It's like, come on, it's like right there guys. And while this may sound a little bit unfounded, Sony has been bringing back a lot of old IPs through remakes and remasters. So there is a slim chance it might come back, just not through Naughty Dog, so, maybe fingers crossed. If I'm grasping at straws even, Jak was even an Astro Bot. It was just a skin, granted, but he was in there, so at least Sony acknowledges him, kind of. That's more than Naughty Dog's done in the last, almost 2 decades at this point? God, I'm old. So where does that leave us? Jak and Daxter is a franchise with a legacy, a fanbase, and a future if Sony decides it's worth it. If they ever do bring it back, it has to come back right. And if that's a Jak 5 or even a whole franchise reboot, it has to be done with love, care, and attention to detail that grasps old players and brings in new ones. Or worst case, it lives in Naughty Dog's closet, forgotten to the sands of time or something like that. I don't know. Only time will tell. But for now, true believers, we wait. And while you wait, thank you for watching me, a random guy on the internet, talk about random stuff. So thank you for watching, like and subscribe and all the other fun stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Later, guys.